This is Coach Josh here from Training for Warriors Portland, and I want to talk today about measurements. So, I know that I've met a lot of people in the fitness industry who argue for and against measurements, and today I just wanted to get a little bit closer to the argument about why we actually take measurements at all, and what the purpose of the measurements we take here at Training for Warriors are. One, taking measurements at all is like it's keeping score for the game that you're playing. And if you've ever watched like a pickup basketball game where nobody is keeping score, you can tell when they go to a competitive game where they actually have a to 5 or to 9 or to 21. You can tell how all of the players key in their attention and their energy a little bit more when someone's keeping score. And knowing what the score is lets you know how well you're doing, and that applies a lot to the process of making decisions in your fitness program. So it makes you more, it raises the stakes, and it makes you more competitive with yourself. Those are two reasons but we have even more reasons than that. If you think about what you're tracking on your body, in the context of a map of the earth, the most important information, if you're out hiking around in the woods, the most important information on your map is where you are in space. You really can't do anything else or make any other decisions if you don't know where you are. It's okay if you know where the water is and where the parking lot is and where the danger areas are, but if you don't know where you are, you don't know how to get to any of those other areas. So where you are in space has so much more to do with what your next step is than anything else. You have to measure. You have to know where you are on the map, and that's why you take measurements. But you don't want to take all of the measurements. When I was a younger trainer, I had I've taken a lot of Paul Chek's courses. I've studied a lot of his material, and if you don't know Paul Chek, he's an extremely intense former physical therapist, and he still does a lot of work in the strength conditioning community and nutrition and all kinds of other things. And through his coursework, I came up with 118 points to measure on the human body, and we're talking about the internal and external range of motion for each limb, and how many degrees of flexion you have for every limb. And I was getting all these data points, but none of them are really helping me make my clients more stronger, faster, or leaner. And I was realizing I was measuring so many things in the quest to not miss anything. I wasn't measuring the valuable things enough. I wasn't creating the right context. So you only want to take the measurements that are going to inform the decisions that you make. And that means that if you don't care about what your vertical jump is, you're not going to measure off of that. If you're not trying to have a program to increase your vertical jump, and if it doesn't matter to you, and it's not going to inform any other decisions, there's no way to measure that. Same with a lot of the other, any metric really. Body weight, body fat percentage, performance. Those things we will adjust the program to increase or decrease any of those numbers as needed, depending on the goals of the person. So we're only taking as much data as we will actually use in the program, which is, again, critical if it helps us focus. What gets measured gets managed. Peter Drucker wrote that in a book, 50 years ago probably, but what gets measured gets managed. So if you know that you've got to check in with your coach about your body fat percentage, about your weight, about if you know you got a bench press test coming up, you're going to be paying a lot more attention to the bench press. You're going to work on that a little bit more diligently, so you're not going to spend any more time on it, but the time you do spend will be more valuable. So just by monitoring the metrics we want to shift, we'll have more of an impact on them in the program, because what gets measured gets managed. People feel scrutinized, and the stakes are raised. So, why take measurements? Keeping the score, knowing where you're at in space, making decisions, and managing what you measure. Those are all the reasons why we do that. Here at Training for Warriors, we don't take a lot of measurements. We measure about 5 or 6 performance indicators. Sometimes it's the total strength of a client or an athlete. So if you're a student here, you're going to know what your deadlift PR is, or your bench press PR. You're going to know these numbers on your rate of improvement. You're going to know what your body fat percentage is, because we're going to manage that as well. Because I want to know, is the program building muscle? Is it helping somebody burn fat? Is it helping them feel good? Because if it's not doing those things, we have to change something, and that's fine. But that's the job. We got to make sure that we got to check our work. So that's part of the measurement process. So we measure performance, body composition, and then indicators of disease risk. So we don't have a laboratory here, but we do have a couple of devices. We have fingers to measure resting heart rate. So we can check the pulse of somebody and figure out what your resting heart rate is. And we can also see how long it takes you to fully recover from bouts of exercise. So by measuring your heart rate variability, your resting heart rate, your recovery time, we can kind of see how the cardiovascular system is doing. And there's a lot of other indicators for disease risk, but those are going to be monitored by the student and their physician and the people working with them. We're doing blood labs and other things to check out how the body's working. Those are all measurements that we care about, and those are the tools that we use here at Training for Warriors to help you bring out the warrior within.